ọmọ mi ayọ̀ mi mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run tó fi fún mi. You are a blessing, not a lesson. I can't wait for you to call me daddy. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún. I feel so lucky that I got you. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún. I feel so blessed that I got you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Riziki Ahmed. I'm a clinical psychologist and I've been in this field for over 10 years. And my first training was in education. So I was a teacher for over 15 years and then went on to study psychology and did it to a master's level. And I felt that the community was in need of psychological services because the Muslim community has very unique needs. We have a lot of challenges. When it comes to substance use, we have a very high rate of substance usage within the Muslim community, especially with the young people. We also have a very high divorce rate as indicated by our qadis. And this is something that we need to work on because when we have dysfunctional families, we tend to have children who have lots of problems. And it's been shown that children from dysfunctional families are more likely to use substance. They're also the ones who are more likely to get involved in crime. And they're also the ones who are more likely to engage in early sexual relations or even to get defiled. So when we think of psychological services, we are thinking of the way we can ensure that our youth get premarital counseling before they get into marriage, and also get postmarital counseling, and also get guidance or somebody to hold their hands when they are having problems with the marriage, so that we don't always end up with divorce. And if there is divorce, we look at how we can cushion these children so that they don't get these advanced reactions of divorce or the effects of divorce. So with counseling, we also have what we are calling radicalization of the youth. If we can understand why our youth are getting radicalized, we can help them. Is it that they are coming from these dysfunctional homes? Is it they don't have a good self-esteem? Is it that they don't feel like they're given their rightful place in the community? So when we do these counseling services that we offer, it's to make somebody understand what is their role in their community, how unique they are. We don't always work with the problems somebody has. We also work on creating some awareness of yourself, which we call like self-awareness. We do trainings. We teach people how to assert themselves, how to manage their stress, how to manage their anger, how to manage conflict, and how to generally just take good care of themselves. And also we work with people who have mental illness. We know that mental illness is an illness just like any other. I always say that we should not stigmatize mental illness. If somebody has a mental illness, it's just like when they have a stomach pain or they have cancer. The same kind of empathy we give to people who have these other diseases should also be given to people who have mental illness. And mental illness is something that is very common and should not be taken for granted. So within the Muslim community, these services of psychologists and counselors are highly needed. And alhamdulillah, I feel that it is a field that many of us should aspire to join so that we can uplift this community, so that we can maybe make sure that the Muslim Ummah regains their rightful place. So today we are going to talk about parenting and the importance of being parents. As Muslims, we understand that the role of a parent is a very noble role. And one of the sadaqah that we leave after we die are our children, who are still praying dua for us, sadaqatul jariyah. So anytime we have a child, we pray that if we should die, that these children will do dua for us and that we can get maybe better status wherever we are because of their dua. So anytime you have a child, this is somebody that you have been given an obligation to bring up by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us remember that these children have rights over us and that on the day of judgment we'll be questioned about them. Nobody will enter Jannah before being questioned about these children that we have been given. Children are a gift and amana from Allah. So being a parent is not something very easy. There is no textbook that will just give you all the answers to parenting. And parenting is one of the things that we start without any certificate. We know when we are going for driving, the first thing we do is we must get a license. If we want to be a chef, you must go for some cooking classes. But with parenting, we marry today, and 1 year down the line, we already have a child, and we don't have any certificate on parenting. So what is important is that most of us who are now more aware, more learned, should gain knowledge from our noble sheikhs on how to bring up children. Talk to psychologists to understand how to bring up these children. Talk to teachers so that we do have a wholesome idea of how to bring up children. And remember that these children have developmental stages, which we are going to talk about as we go. We are also going to talk about this parenting of children through the different ages, parenting of adult children, parenting of children who are going through divorce, parenting of children who are going through bereavement, and parenting of children maybe who are already using substance. What is your role as a parent to this child, or a child who is engaged in any form of crime or behavior that is not what you would like them to engage in? So when does parenting begin? Most of us feel that parenting begins when you get this child, but that is not true. Parenting begins right when you are growing up. We all grow up in a home. We all grew up in a family. And in that family, there are certain values that have been impacted on you. And these same values are the ones that you'll want to impart on your child. So when you start parenting, you started from the time when you are growing up in your family. The way you are brought up is most likely the way you'll also want to bring up your child, or the way you will find yourself bringing up your child unconsciously. You might not do this consciously, but that is who you are. And I always joke by saying that most women will cook pilau the way their mothers cooked pilau. That is exactly the way they will cook it. So it's very likely that you'll also bring up your child the way you were brought up. So it is important to understand that we will come up with something from our childhood into our parenting that we will bring up in our homes. And when you're parenting, it's always important to realize that a parent does not always have the answers, and the parent is not always right. So parenting, when does it begin? It begins, right, like I've said, from when you're still very young. Then when you're growing, if you use any form of substance, maybe you use alcohol, you're smoking, or you chew mirror, or you use anything that is not nice for your body or is addictive, it can affect the child that you're going to get. So at times we do take these things for granted, but there are things that we should actually consider a lot. So if somebody is using any form of substance, it's very advisable that they should stop if they want to get a healthy fetus, because you're going to get a child maybe who might have problems later on in life. In alcohol, we have seen children whose parents take alcohol. They are born with the alcohol syndrome. Like these children are actually born with a problem in their brains. So any substance, if you're using anything, remember that you're already parenting the wrong way. Then when you want to get married, the most important thing for us is we want to get married. At that time, we just want to get married. But who are you marrying? We know we have been told when to marry to check for certain things by our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The beauty, the nobility of the family, the deen. And most of us will go for beauty. Most of us might go for noble family. Most of us might go for how much money they earn. And nowadays it's about, does he drive a V8 or does he have a good job? But at the end of the day, just ask yourself, this person that I am marrying, whether it's the lady or it's the man, is this the person I want to be the mother of my children? If it's the man, you ask yourself, is this the man I want to be the father of my children? And then the family you're marrying into, ask yourself, are these the grandparents I want to be the grandparents of my child? Are these the aunties and the uncles I want for my child? Because by the end of the day, your child will interact with all of them because they are family. So it's very important that before you get married, you look at all those things and make sure that you're satisfied and that you're happy with them, because that is where your parenting starts. So parenting is not something we should take for granted. It's not something that we just think, once I get the child, I will know what to do. No, we start parenting right before we get this pregnancy. So after we have identified this partner that we feel is the right person to be the mother of my child, or is the right person to be the father of my child, it is important that we attend some premarital counseling. Why are we attending this premarital counseling? One, we want to be sure that my definition of marriage and their definition of marriage is the same. If they are not the same, we try and marry them in some way so that we can have a family that is peaceful, where we can now nurture children in a very peaceful and conducive environment. Also, we all are in agreement that we want children, and that when we get the children, we want to bring them up in a certain way, and that we can have certain values as a family that we will want to follow in that family. So if we do not have premarital counseling, we might all come in with our own notion of what marriage is. We'll all come in with our own notion of what parenting is. We'll all come in with our own notion of how we want to lead our lives. And by the time we are getting to a place where we are at par with each other, we might have fought a lot. So it's good to avoid all that by having the premarital counseling, and that is also part of the parenting that begins right before we have this child. Okay, so after the counseling, going through the premarital counseling, of course we have the big occasion, which is the wedding. And that to me is also part of parenting, because what kind of a wedding are we doing? Are we doing it within the Islamic principles? Are we going out of the Islamic principles? Anytime we are out of Islamic principles, everything about us will get affected. So it's very important that even as we are doing the wedding, we still maintain our Muslim identity. I know we do forget and get out of hand, but always remind yourself that I'm starting my parenting even on my wedding day. So it's not a day where we should serve alcohol. It's not a day where we should allow ourselves to not have our hijab. So it's a day that as we are doing everything, we keep reminding ourselves that this is a day your child will watch that video. Your child will want to know how was your wedding day, and there's a message you'll be passing to your child by your child just watching your video of your marriage. So if the child can see that day we decided to let God to go on rest, then the child will know that we are allowed on certain days to let God go on rest. So it's very important that whatever we are doing, always remind ourselves that there's a message we are going to pass to our children, which eventually they will get, because they will see the photos, they will see the video. And once they see that, they will get a message from it, from you, because that is your wedding. And you'll not start telling your child, this was not my parents who did this, it was my aunties. The child will not understand that. The child knows that was your wedding. And because it is your wedding, you have a right to say, there are certain things I will not allow in my wedding, and I will not allow us to do Islamic things to make our wedding more colorful and more beautiful. So it's very important that we stick within the limitations of Islam if we really want to bring up children who will be based on Islamic principles. I remember I was watching a wedding video with my friend, and her young daughter actually started complaining, like, Mom, how come we don't appear in the wedding pictures? We don't appear in the video. How come we were never invited? So for me, I was really amused, and we had a good laugh with her. And now when I was thinking about it, I'm thinking, look at the way children are observant, and they will pick things that we didn't think they will even pick. And the mother had a really hard time trying to explain why they were not in the wedding. But now look at this child, if they had picked any other aspect of that wedding, like what would they have thought about it? Would they have used it in future, thinking that it is right? So it is important that as parents, Muslim parents, everything that we know, remember that the child is sponging, and we'll always ask questions about it. So now we have done this wedding. We have what we know that will go on. We know that there is this wife and the husband, they will want to have children. And we know that as Muslims, we have told that any time before we have any intimacy, we must do dua to keep away shaitan from our children. So it's very important. It's a good reminder that in as much as we might want to forget, or we might get caught up in the moment, to always remember to say the dua. Then it is important because with this dua, we are actually asking Allah to keep shaitan from anything that Allah might bless us with. So it is important that we don't forget the dua, and we remind each other. If the husband has forgotten the dua, the wife can remind the husband. If the Wife has forgotten the dua, the husband can remind the wife, because we are trying to protect these children from shaitan. So it's important, and that's an aspect of parenting. Then we get to a point where now maybe the mother gets pregnant. That time parenting has also started. So how do we treat a mother who is just gotten pregnant? Pregnancy is not easy. The first trimester can be very challenging for most mothers, especially the first time mothers. And at times we have where they don't feel like eating certain things, they feel certain things smell bad. There's a lot of nausea, and people get to vomit. It's very important that the husband understands that the wife is going through a very difficult time. She needs a lot of support. She needs to feel loved. And when a woman is pregnant, at times she feels like she's not herself. There's a lot of hormonal imbalance. She might cry, she might get upset for very little things. So it's very important that the husband understands that this is not a very easy period for the wife. I think the husband should always use what I call "we are pregnant." Like you think of it as both of us are in it together. The times of saying you are pregnant are long over. We are pregnant means we are in this together. So you are there to support her through all this nausea, hold her hand, understand what she's going through, understand the mood swings, and not take them personally. I remember somebody who once came for counseling, and they were telling me, my wife hates me. She can't stand me nowadays. She doesn't like me anymore, and she feels like I have this funny smell. And I told her, what is happening? You know, she's just gotten pregnant. And I told him, you know, when a woman is pregnant, she goes through these mood swings. She does feel certain things. Some things smell more than before. So please try and understand her. And actually that solved it. So it's very important that before we rush to say, she doesn't love me anymore, she doesn't care about me anymore, we look at what stage of pregnancy is she at. And during pregnancy also, there are certain things we need to take very good care of. One, we must be able to visit the doctor on time to know if the fetus is growing well. We should also try to know if we need any supplements, because at times we do need supplements, because sometimes when people can get anemic. And we want a wholesome child, so we avoid anything that we feel can be harmful to this child. So it's very important that during pregnancy we are taking very good care of ourselves as mothers, and that we remember that we are carrying a being. And then what can we do when we are pregnant that can help in this child's upbringing? Because remember, we are talking about parenting. One, if you're reading the Quran, it is very important. In psychology, they say you can listen to some form of music, or it has been noted that the kind of things or the music the mother listened to when she was pregnant is the same kind that the child will love when they are born. So if we start by reciting the Quran, the child will already have the idea that they will also have heard the Quran when they were in the mother's womb. And we say that children can hear when they are in the womb, and they actually can perceive a lot of emotions. When the mother is happy, the child can perceive that. When the mother is sad, the child can perceive all that. So pregnancy is a time where we know that this fetus is getting a lot of emotion. How do children get to know their mothers? Children get to know their mothers by the heartbeat. This child is in the womb, they can hear the mother's heartbeat. So when the child is born, we always wonder, how come this child is 1 day old and they already know the mother? It's because they know the mother's heartbeat. How do they know the father? They know the father's voice. They've been hearing his voice throughout when they were in the womb. So it's not like this child is being born to a home where they don't know anybody. And it is important that the mother avoids anything that is stressful. We know that children who are born by mothers who have gone through a lot of stress have higher chances of having a form of disability, and very likely to have challenges. So it is very, very important that we avoid any stressful situations. And when we feel that we are going through stress, we try and get help as fast as possible so that we don't affect the baby. Eating, it's very important that the mother eats well. Her diet should be well taken care of. And this mother needs to be supported and loved. We know when you get pregnant, you go out of shape. And we are in a society where the shape is so important. So most of the mothers will be wondering, how will I shed this fat after I give birth? How will I look? How do I look? Do I look really bad? So as the husband, you're supposed to keep reassuring your wife that you like her, you don't mind, that you know she's going through a form of jihad, just carrying this pregnancy. Make sure that you're making her have a good mood and that her mental state is very good so that we can have this healthy child. Labor. When we talk about the last time, like when now the mother is almost getting this child, we go through labor. Labor is quite painful, it's not easy, and at that point also a lot of support is needed. And it is important to know that a lot can happen during this period. So it's good to get ourselves to the hospital on time, because if the child's brain lacks any oxygen, we can get what we call cerebral palsy. If we have any accidents during this delivery, they can affect this child later. So it's a very important process, and we should avoid taking it like misusing that time and saying, I'll wait for the labor to prolong before I go to the hospital. Anything can happen, and labor can become an emergency at any time. So it's important to go to the hospital early and make sure that we are following up on everything that we are told. If it is to be a CS, it's always important that the mother will have been prepared emotionally before the operation that you're going to go through a CS, and even be prepared for the labor, that somebody knows it's going to be painful, it's going to take this period of time, most likely this is what I will feel, and they are able to deal with it and understand that this is what I'm going to go through. And some mothers, after they get this child, at times if the labor is so difficult, they can go into some form of depression. Some mothers can go into what we call postnatal depression. So after the mother gives birth, it is very important that we are very, very supportive to them. Getting a child is a very overwhelming experience, because this is somebody that now totally depends on the mother. This child needs to be changed, this child needs to be breastfed, this child needs to be lifted. If this child is not taken care of, they are very likely to die. So it can be a very, very overwhelming and not a very easy task to begin with. So at this point, you, the father, what is your role? So here the father should be very active, should play a very active role of being there, helping out in everything, and there must be somebody helping this mother cope with everything that is happening. And this is the time, like immediately the baby is born, we know we as Muslims, the first thing we do is the adhan. So should a father be present to do their adhan? Should the father have somebody who they want to do their adhan present? It is very important. So it's very important that we know what this child needs. And the first thing is the adhan. And why the adhan? We are introducing this child to Islam right from the word go. Remember, we say we are born on fitrah. So it's just reminding them that you are born on fitrah and that you're a Muslim and that this is who you're supposed to worship. So what are we doing? We are actually bringing the child back on the right track from the time they just leave the mother's womb. So that is very important. The adhan, it is a very important time, and we should treat it not like a ritual. We should remind ourselves that this child has been born on the fitrah, and we are just reminding them and putting them back on the right track. And it should be done immediately after this child is born. The other thing we do is the tanwik, where we know we are putting something sweet into the child's mouth. We can have some honey, we can have a date, something just sweet. And of late, there's research showing that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam hadith of giving this child something sweet actually has a scientific element in that it actually regulates something in the brain. So anything that we are doing as Muslims, always remember that we just don't do it in vain. There's always something, and there's a wisdom behind it. So we should also do that. And then one of the most important things we do is give our child a good name. And it is sad when we call our children some names that are really, really sad, like Tabu, Mashaka, and names that are actually for putting them down. And when you're choosing a name, make sure the name has a good meaning. And when we look at hadith, you'll see that the Prophet actually used to change the names of the Sahabas. Like Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would listen to a name and would ask the person, can you change your name to this? Why? Because a name is a very important element in someone's life. A name defines who you are. And a name can actually guide you into being a better person or even into being a bad person. So as a parent, the first gift you give to your child is a good name. So choose your names wisely and start finding out what name do you want to give your child, if it is a boy, if it is a girl, and make sure that you give them a name that you will always be proud of, a name that they too will appreciate one day when they are grown up, a name that will guide them through their life. And as Muslims, we know that names are very, very powerful. So as you give your children names, don't just name them anybody. Don't go to Jay-Z, Beyonce, those fancy names, Kardashian. Don't just go for any name. Make sure that you're giving your child a name that will have an impact into their lives. So today we are only going to get up to there. So Jazakallah khair for your time. Until we meet again next week, this is Riziki.
Ọmọ mi, ayọ̀ mi, mo dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ Ọlọ́run tó fi fún mi. You are a blessing, not a lesson. I can't wait for you to call me daddy. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún. I feel so lucky that I got you. Inú mi dùn, ayọ̀ mi kún. I feel so blessed that I got you.